Hey, what's going on, roleplayers? It's the Bard here, and welcome back to the corner. It's time for part 3 of our Ranger analysis, covering Gloomstalker, Horizon Walker, and Monster Slayer. Alright, let's get into Gloomstalker then. First thing we'll be covering is the Gloomstalker magic. So all of these archetypes have the advantage of getting additional spells. However, all of the spells that these archetypes get are complete freebies. This is a really good spell selection. 3 out of 5 of these don't require any concentration, and all of these are good problem-solving spells. I look at the Gloomstalker and I consider it to be a good path to go down if you don't have any mage in your group. Disguise Self is one of those great problem-solving spells. Rope Trick is amazing for defense and setting up ambushes. Fear is a great crowd-controlling spell. Greater Invisibility is probably the gold standard when it comes to offense, defense, and utility. And finally, Seeming gives you total party coverage when it comes to changing your appearance, allowing you to go anywhere and do anything. It has to be said, this is an impressive start for the Gloomstalker. So Dread Ambusher gives you not 1 but 4 things all rolled into the same ability. However, all these things are only really useful on the first turn of combat. But let's have a look at them before we dismiss them out of hand. So first of all, you're going to get a bonus to your initiative equal to your wisdom modifier. This is great because you need to get in as fast as you can. In any combat situation, the person with the highest initiative usually dictates the way the battle goes. A high dexterity, high wisdom ranger with the alert feat could probably get the initiative 9 times out of 10. So they'll be able to get in a quick fear and crowd control the entire group and let the rest of the party pick them off at their leisure. An additional 10-foot walking speed is amazing for getting into the position you want, and no one's going to say no to a free attack, especially when it doesn't require any kind of bonus action or reaction. On top of that, you're going to get an additional d8 damage of the same weapon type that you're using, so everything is just really focused into one initial strong hit. If you can make this ability work for you in the first round, then it's ideal, but after that, it's completely useless. It does nothing for you at all in any subsequent rounds, so it does give me some cause for concern. I do kind of like it as a thematic ability, however, it is kind of like a ranger assassin style character ability, without necessitating the need to go down the rogue path. I really love the theme of this ability: strike fast, strike first, and get out of there. So next up is Umbral Sight, and it's going to give you a bonus to your dark vision. Of course, if you don't already have dark vision, if you're something like a human or dragonborn, for example, you're going to then get it, which is always going to be to your advantage. However, what's really unusual about the ability is your capacity for invisibility when dealing with other creatures with dark vision. You will be invisible to any creature that relies on dark vision to see you in the dark. That's an incredibly bizarre ability, and it is somewhat situational, but I'm not going to deny it does have its uses. However, I'd be more concerned about its drawbacks. Say, for example, your entire party is in a battle and you all have dark vision. Now, let's say you've just taken a massive hit from a trap which you didn't see on the battlefield. Now, I know that traps and combat don't usually mix, but it's just an example. Or perhaps you've taken a big hit because the creature got lucky and found you despite your invisibility. Now, you want to get healed, but your cleric doesn't know where you are because he can't see you, because he might rely on dark vision in order to see you, and thus you are invisible to your party as well. If there's no light in the area and your party is relying on dark vision in order to see anything, they will never see you. They will never see you, and they will never be able to truly assist you because you are constantly invisible to them. If, on the other hand, a party member is using a light source in order to light their way, then dark vision becomes unnecessary because everyone can see because of the light, so it becomes a useless ability again. I don't know if this was intended on the part of the writers or if it was just poor writing, but when you look at it from this perspective, if you'll excuse the pun, you'll see that it's just a really bad ability that works more against you than it can for you. I don't want to dash your hopes for the Gloomstalker, but it started off so amazing at the beginning of this archetype, then it started to dip, and now it's just gone into total freefall. So Gloomstalker partially redeems itself with Iron Mind. It gives you a proficiency on your wisdom saving throws. However, if you already have that saving throw, despite whatever reason it might be, then you can instead pick from charisma or intelligence saving throws. If there's one thing that roleplayers fear more than death, it's losing control of their character. Being able to cover your bases when it comes to saving throws is so important for any survival of any character, so getting a saving throw freebie is not something to complain about. However, again, it's situational at best, because there's only sometimes you're going to be subjected to saving throws, and only sometimes that you're going to be subjected to particular wisdom saving throws. It's not bad, just not brilliant. Stalker's Flurry is another one of those abilities that seems like it's going to be good, but as I'm so fond of saying, it looks good on paper, but ultimately pointless. The amount of situations that you're going to need this in is going to be practically zero. I want you to consider this. If you have advantage, you're going to get 2 attack dice, and there's a good chance at least one of them will hit. If you hit, this ability becomes null and void. At the same time, if you have disadvantage, there's a good chance you're going to miss all the time. So you get this extra attack, but because you get the extra attack, it still has disadvantage as well. There's a good chance you're going to miss. This attack really only comes into its own if you miss and have neither advantage nor disadvantage. So it's a crutch that is there to help you when you are slightly out of position. You should be actively trying to get advantage all the time, so this ability is of no use to you. If you do have disadvantage for any reason, this ability is no use to you. It's only basically of any use when you're kind of on a level playing field and you just get an unlucky roll. And finally we have Shadowy Dodge. Again, it looks good on paper, ultimately pointless. It doesn't work if the creature has advantage on you, fine. If the creature makes an attack roll against you and doesn't have advantage on the roll, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on it. But what if the creature already has disadvantage on the roll? It's a pointless ability. Again, it's if you're on a level playing field. So you can use your reaction to basically give a creature disadvantage. I would say there are much better uses for your reaction. However, if this is the only thing you can do with your reaction, then fine, go ahead and use it. But to me, it just isn't enough interest at level 15 to make it a good character archetype ability.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games. We got everything you want. We know the name.
So let's get into the Horizon Walker now and start looking at its expanded spell list. Protection from Evil and Good is one of those situational spells. It's useful against aberrations, celestials, elementals, fays, fiends, undead, that kind of thing. But you just want something more general. It's great for certain particular character archetypes, like for example when I did my Demonologist build for my Hexblade guide. But other than that, it's not the kind of spell that you take all the time. And even though it's free, so you don't have to worry about memorizing it, it's not really good enough. Not in my perspective anyway. Misty Step is one of my favourite spells, because it's a 30-foot self-teleport which you can use as a bonus action. You don't have to worry about picking it because you get it for free. Really good spell that gets you in and out of situations at your leisure. Love it, great addition to this archetype. The Horizon Walker also gets haste, and as we all know, haste is one of the best spells, especially for a melee combatant. Extra attacks, extra defense, extra movement, you've gotta love haste. It's so useful in so many different situations. Banishment has gone through some changes over the years. I personally don't feel that it's the spell that it used to be. Still, it does have some uses, and it's a good stalling tactic. At least these days it's useful against anything and everything. And finally get Teleportation Circle. Teleportation Circle is an okay spell, but it's one that requires you to spend 50 gold pieces every time you use it. At least it's a spell you always have, and you can always get back to a particular place whenever you need to. But I know I keep saying it, but situational at best. So Detect Portal allows you to detect any planar portal within a mile of you. This is a level 3 ability. You're level 3. You're going to be on this plane most of the time. In fact, in many cases, you probably won't even go to other planes, because barely any DMs I know how to use them properly. What were you thinking giving the players this ability this soon? I'm sorry guys, but that just scrambled my head. The level of stupid is just unbelievable. While there may be some uses for it, I don't think you're going to need it at all. Ever. Because the majority of the time you're going to be on the material plane. Having access to the astral or the ethereal possibly could be of some use, but most of the time you're not going to need it. And it's for planar portals. If it was just portal, it would be so much better. But it's for planar portals. This might be useful for advanced level play for players who've been doing it for a long time. However, if you're a beginner, I don't think this will ever see the light of day. You will probably never ever use this. Most of the time, however, if you do happen to come across a planar portal, it's one your DM wants you to find anyway. So I really don't like it. I just can't find enough practical uses for it to be useful over and over again. And this is my big thing when it comes to the character classes. I want abilities that I can use over and over and over again and that are going to be useful all the time. That is what makes a good ability, how much you can use it and how often you can bring it to bear. Planar Warrior gives you a bonus to damage, but it costs your bonus action to do it. In many cases, I would much rather have my bonus action and use it to get an additional attack, with something like 2-weapon fighting, for example. There's a very good chance that you can actually get potentially more damage out of 2-weapon fighting than you can out of Planar Warrior. However, it does improve at level 11 to 2d8, but still, for me, it's still not a brilliant use of a bonus action. However, being able to change all of your damage to force damage does have certain merits and certain potential, especially when dealing with certain types of creatures, but again, that's situational at best. It's good to have the extra damage, but in many cases, you just want more swings. So now we've got Ethereal Step. Now I'm always a little bit meh when it comes to single shot, once per short rest, long rest style spells. So Ethereal Step isn't bad. It's good to get onto the ethereal plane, but only briefly. It's the kind of thing that just gives you enough leeway to get out of a situation or to get around an obstacle. Really, it's just a problem-solving ability for moving around obstacles, but it only lasts one round, so you better do it fast. So Distant Strike looks like a lot of fun. 10-foot teleport before attacking a creature, and it allows you to move again and again and again, so that you can attack multiple creatures. And if you do get to attack 2, you can attack a third if it's within range. Not a bad ability at all. However, just remember guys, stay critical, stay skeptical. Look at this ability. You can attack 3 creatures with it. In the same way that Colossus Slayer can be used virtually all the time, you get a similar ability in this archetype, but it costs your bonus action. When you consider this ability at level 11, it allows you to attack 3 creatures, whereas something like Whirlwind would allow you to potentially attack 3 or more creatures. So it's not bad, it's just look at it in context. But on the other hand, however, it doesn't actually state in which direction you can teleport. So if you have, say, a creature on ground level, and then you've got maybe a flyer, and then someone perhaps on a ledge, you could potentially attack 1, teleport up, attack again, and then teleport again and get up onto that ledge for the final attack against the third creature. If you are creative enough, you can get some really interesting bonuses out of this ability just by thinking about where you want to teleport to. If you wanted to attack a creature, teleport into a cage, attack another creature, teleport out of the cage and attack a third creature, you could use it that way. There are a lot of bonuses and a lot of functions because you're getting a teleportation move as opposed to just a regular move. Whilst it might not be comparatively as powerful as some of the other abilities, it just rewards clever play, and I always like abilities that reward clever play. Spectral Defense isn't a bad ability. It really helps you to make your hit points go a lot further by reducing the damage of the incoming attack. However, when you compare it to something like Blade Ward, which is a cantrip, Blade Ward is going to be useful against 3 kinds of attacks, and every attack that happens within the time that you have that spell active. You can only use the Spectral Defense once, and it requires a reaction to do so. So it's not amazing. Although it is useful to a degree, it's just not as powerful as some of the higher level abilities which you should be entitled to. That being said, however, it is useful. It is something that you can use your reaction for, because not all the time you're going to be able to use your reaction. So it is something that's going to see some use. Let's get into the Monster Slayer spell list. Now, Protection from Evil and Good we've already gone over, and Banishment we've already gone over as well. So let's go with Zone of Truth. A fairly thematic spell that seems to work well. You cast it, you want to know where the creatures are, especially if you think that the target you're casting it around might be protecting the thing you're hunting, so yeah, it's not a bad spell. It's a freebie as well, so again, you don't have to take it, it's just automatically there. A somewhat useful spell for getting the information you need if skills aren't doing the job. Next up is Magic Circle. I'm not really into Magic Circle because it takes a minute to cast. It's likely you're going to be hunting, tracking on the move a lot. In the situations where the creatures are coming to you, you're not going to have a minute in order to cast this thing, and it requires money for you to basically get the most out of it. So I never really liked Magic Circle. It's just the kind of spell that doesn't really do anything for me. This spell is essentially, for all intents and purposes, a souped up version of Protection from Evil and Good. and it doesn't really do enough. And you're not going to be summoning creatures, because that's what Magic Circle's best for, if you're going for summoning. So I wouldn't really advise using Magic Circle if it can be avoided. Hold Monster is one of the best combat spells. It even has some utility as well. Easy hits and auto crits. Nothing else needs to be said about this thing apart from it is so good, make sure you're using it all the time. For any kind of game where you have no idea about what the creatures can do, Hunter's Sense is an absolute lifesaver. Some DMs will tell you what the creature can and can't do if you make a roll, but other DMs like to keep their secrets. So Hunter's Sense is great for getting all the information that you need. Damage immunities, creatures' resistances, vulnerabilities, these are the things you'll be able to take advantage of. Hunter's Sense is a very useful ability if your DM is the kind of person who likes to keep their cards close to their chest. Also guys, take note, if you have a creature that you've never seen before, use this ability, get all of those important statistics, and then write them down. You can even do this in-game. Your Monster Slayer can be writing his own bestiary, so make sure you take note of every creature that you come across. Once you've got that knowledge of a creature, if there is a situation where you know that there's a particular creature you'll be going up against, you'll be the better prepared for it because you will know what it can do in advance. Even if you already know the resistances and the vulnerabilities of a creature, it might still be worth using this ability anyway. Certain creatures can cast spells, that would give them certain resistances and immunities. So even though you might already know about them, it could be worth just using this ability in case they've cast something, because then you'll know exactly which ones to try to bypass. This is also useful against any creature or race that has the capacity to cast spells, so anything that picks up a player class, like Wizard for example, might be able to cast something along the lines of protection from elements. So if you come across a human or an elf, sometimes it could be worth just casting this ability to see if they have any defenses up. If the target has any immunities or any resistances going at the time, you'll know about it and you'll know how best to avoid it. Despite the fact it's an action to cast, I still think this is a useful ability, and if you have a creature that you're facing off against and you're not sure about what special qualities it might have, this can be one of the best things to do on your first round. Slayer's Prey is a bonus action to use and it gives you an extra d6 damage on the first attack of every round. It's not a bad ability, however the problem with it is it's only useful before your next short rest, and you can only use it on one creature. That is a little bit of a disappointment, but at least it's a balanced ability when you compare it to some of the others that you see. Whenever the target of your Slayer's Prey forces you to make a saving throw, or you want to escape from one of their grapples, you get an extra d6 on your roll. That seems oddly specific. If you're dealing with a varied group, maybe another adventuring party for instance, then you need to put your Slayer's Prey on either the biggest, strongest grappler or the most deadly looking sorcerer. So it's not an amazing ability in my opinion, because it requires you to target the right creature and it's only if they use specific tactics against you, so it's not amazing. Still, two abilities rolled into one are always better than just having one ability on its own. So having a bonus against being grappled or having a bonus against spellcasting, I'm not going to complain about it. It's just very difficult if you're having to deal with a group and you don't know what creature is the biggest threat. So magic uses Nemisis is basically like having counterspell, which is always much better for you if you are a weapon-based character, because you have the chance to counter the first spell that they're about to get off, and then you can get in and start dealing some damage. Without that defense, without that initial casting, it might make their life a lot more difficult and give the advantage to you and your party. Also, you can deal with creatures that might have the ability to teleport naturally without casting spells. Again, it's the kind of ability you can then use to stop creatures from getting away from you, because teleport is the ultimate get out of jail free card for most creatures. If it looks like they're going to get killed, then chances are they usually just want to teleport away and regroup. At least you can stop that. You get what is essentially Dimensional Anchor. Those of you who are only familiar with 5th edition won't know what Dimensional Anchor is, but those of you who have played earlier editions will know that it's that spell that you always get stuck with whenever there's a creature that wants to really make sure that you don't survive. It stops you from teleporting away and it keeps you there so it can get its clutches into you. That is exactly how you want to use this ability. Once you've found the creature, you don't want to let it get away, and that's why this ability exists, to stop creatures from making their escape. This will probably see a lot more use than you expect because a lot of creatures have the capacity for spellcasting these days. So always make full use of this if there's a particularly deadly spell that you're expecting. It might even be worth trying to grab Knowledge Arcana from somewhere so that you can kind of get some idea about what kind of spells a creature will be using against you. Slayer's Counter is an ability that really works nicely. If the target of your Slayer's prey forces you to make a saving throw, whether it's against a spell or some other special ability, you get to have an additional attack as a reaction. If that attack hits, you automatically succeed on your saving throw. At this point in the game, there are so many deadly effects that one failed saving throw could mean the end of the party. So being able to resist that automatically, as well as dealing extra damage to a creature, is so good. Trust me, I have seen an entire party fall because one player has failed a saving throw, and it is just devastating when that happens. So this ability is very similar to the Mage Slayer feat, and in fact it might even be a little bit better, and any ability that is similar to or better than a feat is always going to be to your advantage. This ability is probably slightly better than having the Mage Slayer feat because you're not going to be up against those kind of creatures all the time. However, once you do get to higher levels, there will be more creatures that can cast spells, so it's kind of balanced in that way. It's still a good ability, and I definitely think it's going to see a lot of use.
You can taste the bright lights, but you won't get them for free in the jungle. Welcome to the jungle.
So how do these archetypes measure up to each other? Guys, I know you don't want to hear this, but with abilities that you can only use on the first round of combat, abilities that can only be used under situations that hardly arise, and abilities that can potentially hinder you more than they can help you, I would have to put Gloomstalker at the bottom. And unfortunately, a bonus to certain saving throws and a couple of really good spells aren't going to be enough to redeem this archetype for me. The sad thing is I really liked this archetype and I wanted it to do well, but when we got to Umbral Sight and it came to the realization that half of your party won't be able to see you either, it's just not going to work for me. Also, getting another attack which basically suffers from all the disadvantages that caused you to miss in the first place, it's not going to do it. And finally, a level 15 ability that gives you the capacity to give disadvantage to a creature that attacks you. There are easier and better ways to get disadvantage on another creature. I know you guys didn't want to hear this because I know a lot of you like the Gloomstalker, but when you look at the abilities, when you consider how they actually work, most of it is working against you, and I really cannot get behind it. Now, I do like Horizon Walker, and I think it lends itself to a very specific style of play, but I just can't help but think that some of the abilities are just in the wrong place. Detect Portal is okay, but you really wouldn't need it until high level play anyway. If your DM is putting you in situations where you're going to other planes at level 3, then you might want to seriously consider in what direction the adventure is going. So I can't imagine why you would need this ability so soon. Also, things like Ethereal Step are only marginally useful. Distant Strike is a very good ability, however. You do get to teleport around and there are a lot of practical functions for clever players. But unfortunately, things like Spectral Defense can be compared to a spell like Blade Ward, and you get something better out of a cantrip than you get out of your level 15 ability. Haste is a nice thing to have, and Misty Step is a great escape tool, but again, a few good spells aren't really enough to redeem an entire archetype for me. I think Beastmaster has lots of potential. Really good scout, powerful combatant, and someone even made the great suggestion of having small characters that can have flying mounts, so there are lots of options there. I really like Beastmaster, and it's particularly good, I think, also for small characters who in and of themselves cannot do very much damage. I really like the Beastmaster, and it's got lots of potential, and when you consider the fact that you can use your beast for flanking, when you take advantage of exceptional training for the way it can move around the battlefield and get out of situations, being able to then make charges, get into advantageous positions to give you and it certain advantages, yeah, it's got to be said, Beastmaster is actually pretty good, and once you can start sharing spells, you can start kicking out a lot of damage with your beast, so I wouldn't discount the thing. Something you also need to bear in mind is the fact that your beast works on its own initiative, so you can stagger your turns. One of you can be attacking whenever they feel like it, and the other one can be delaying their action to deal with certain creatures when the need arises. So for example, dealing with spellcasters, being able to interrupt their castings. So you've got a lot of advantages there and a lot of potential tactical play. The only thing that kind of makes it a little bit more difficult for the Beastmaster is the fact that the beast itself doesn't have an enormous amount of hit points, but it does have respectable AC and the damage it kicks out is pretty good as well. It's a very difficult choice between Beastmaster and Monster Slayer because Beastmaster does have a lot of tactics you can use by having that extra creature on your side. But Monster Slayer allows you to know the resistances, immunities and vulnerabilities of certain creatures. This is so good. Your entire party can take advantage of this. You are a real team player when it comes to that special ability. And your other abilities are actually pretty good as well. Being able to kick out some extra damage, also having that counter attack is really useful. You also have the potential to make better saving throws, and later on you have the potential to make additional saving throws automatically. Now this is really good. The only drawback is that you do need to have your Slayer's Prey on the target at the time, and you can only use it once per short rest. You also have a fairly mundane spell list in certain things like Protection from Evil and Good or Magic Circle. They're just not amazing, Zone of Truth you're not going to want to have all the time. But things like Banishment and Hold Monster are really powerful spells. Hold Monster is amazing because, again, your entire party can take advantage of it, and you're going to be kicking out so much damage if you can get that spell to stick. Consider also, if you know a creature's vulnerability, you can put Slayer's Prey onto that creature. You can also potentially have something like Hold Monster on there at the same time. You're going to be dealing critical damage that's also going to be improved because of their vulnerabilities that you're taking advantage of. There are just lots of potential for you to absolutely devastate the right monster in the right situation. Hunter takes the top spot for me, not only because its abilities are somewhat powerful, but also because you can tailor the entire class to do exactly what you want it to. Certain abilities like Volley are absolutely ridiculous when it comes to dealing damage, and being able to just make additional attacks against certain creatures for nothing with special abilities like Horde Breaker, or just being able to deal extra damage with Colossus Slayer, these are really, really good. There are a couple of bad abilities, but the thing is, you get to pick the one that you want anyway, so you can just avoid those. There is enough in this archetype that allows you to tailor the class to all the things that you want it to do. You can make it very individual, and you can get a lot of mileage out of the special abilities, some of which are even really ridiculous. Things like Stand Against the Tide that allow you to turn misses against you into attacks onto other creatures, so you end up with creatures that are basically killing themselves off. Hunter is a really good archetype, and I think there's just so much fun that can be had with it. Alright guys, that was the end of my Ranger analysis. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Perhaps you have a different perspective on the different archetypes now. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and also get in those suggestions for the next Subscriber Sunday. So if you have ideas, if you want to have more analysis, if you want to have more unconventional characters, if you want to have more builds, or whatever it is you would like to have from me, make sure you comment, and the highest upvoted comment will be the subject of the next Subscriber Sunday. And I will see you guys next time at the gaming table.